Hey Doc Squad, Dr. White here with the Business Analysis Doctor. By the end of this video, you'll understand the day-to-day responsibilities of a business analyst in Waterfall and Agile environments. Number one, situation analysis. This involves getting the right information to gather your bearings to make sure that you have an understanding of what's going on now, why a change is needed, and what the expectations are. The situation analysis generally starts with understanding the current state. This involves identifying and communicating with the right stakeholders to make sure that the needs have been identified and defined. Then you're going to want to get some context on how we ended up where we are today by doing a document analysis with process maps and procedures. Basically, you're going to want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the project scope in terms of the problem, the opportunity, and the constraints that need to be maintained. Next, you'll need to define the future state. This involves working with the stakeholders to define high-level goals and an ideal future state. This might involve brainstorming on a range of high-level solutions. Ultimately, you'll want to have a clear understanding of the business objectives, solution scope, high-level requirements, and key performance indicators. Now that you have the current and the future state outlined, you'll need to perform a gap analysis to determine how to get from where you are now to the ideal future state. This will come up with what's called a change strategy, which is a high-level plan of all of the key activities that need to be done in order to make the future state possible. So the key deliverables for the situation analysis will be either a refined business case or inputs to a project charter. Now, while the business analyst may not be directly responsible for creating these documents, we should be involved or providing input so that we can ensure that we have the appropriate information to move forward and effectively do our business analysis work. In an Agile context, this involves knowing where we are today, understanding what needs to change, what the expected outcome is, and understanding how value is determined. This usually involves the following tasks. Analyze the current state. This involves identifying and communicating with key stakeholders in order to understand the need and to be sure that that need is defined. Then you want to get some context by collaborating with the product owner or the customer and other key stakeholders through means of observation or shadowing. Essentially, you want to make sure you have a clear understanding of the big picture and how this particular initiative impacts that big picture. The situation analysis also involves determining the vision. Business analysts may facilitate visioning exercises in order to develop a vision statement. And this involves identifying the goals and benefits, the scope, and the impact measures. From there, you want to continuously analyze new information to understand the impact of this vision. Then you want to brainstorm with the project team to analyze a range of possible solutions for that vision. From there, you want to use the impact metrics from the vision statement to identify the best overall approach. Essentially, you want to have a clear understanding of the expected impact of the initiative. Now let's talk about value stream mapping. Value stream mapping is a common technique that's used in both Agile and Lean practices in order to determine value-added and non-value-added activities in the overall stream. Now, the BA can facilitate a current and a future state value stream mapping exercise based on the information acquired from the previous steps. Key deliverables for the situation analysis for an Agile project will likely include the current and future state value stream maps in addition to a refined vision statement. Now, while the business analyst facilitates the vision statement, the product owner or the customer is essentially considered the author of the vision statement. In business analysis, a goal or objective without a plan creates waste. So you need to plan out the business analysis approach to be in alignment with the overall project approach. So while the project team makes a decision on the overall project approach, it's the business analyst's jurisdiction to determine the actual business analysis approach. This plan will include how you'll identify and engage with stakeholders, how you'll manage requirements, how you'll obtain requirements, and also your change control process. The key deliverable for planning BA work is a comprehensive business analysis plan. This plan may be adjusted as new information is received, and it should also serve as an input to the overall project plan. Business analyst activities in an Agile environment are typically planned to align with the team charter. Now, the team charter is a document that's created by the Agile team to determine the team's values, communication processes, commitments, and essentially how the Agile team will work together. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Agile BA transitions from a role into a skill set. In most cases, the Agile team requires a T-shaped learning. T-shaped learning basically means that you have a in-depth knowledge of one domain and a high-level understanding of a broad range of skills. So for instance, as a BA, you might have an in-depth knowledge of BA skill sets, traditional BA skill sets such as requirements gathering, elicitation, and things of the like. But in an agile environment, you may need to expand to be more involved in things like testing or maybe even some lightweight development, just as long as you have the required skill set to complete the required tasks. Agile business analysts utilize rolling wave planning. This is an iterative planning technique where activities and deliverables that are due in the near future are planned out in detail, while activities and deliverables that are further out are planned at a higher level and given less detail. This is usually facilitated through planning workshops. During initial planning, the project team may develop a high-level release plan, and this could be facilitated by the business analyst, the product owner, the team leader, or scrum master, depending on the framework. And then more detailed plans such as upcoming releases or iteration plans are developed closer towards delivery time. The BA may facilitate or be included in the development of the product roadmap. This is a strategic planning document that communicates the overall direction and progress towards the project vision. The document usually includes a vision statement, desired outcomes, themes, and high-level requirements. So key deliverables for business analysis planning for an Agile project includes the team charter, a high-level release plan, and the product roadmap. Now, gathering requirements involves collecting information that's given or readily available to us, while eliciting requirements, on the other hand, involves probing and drawing out information that may or may not have otherwise been thought of. Now, business analysts should plan for elicitation activities with some form of a plan or agenda. There's numerous techniques that a business analyst can use to elicit business analysis information, but some common techniques might include workshops, interviews, focus groups, observation, document analysis, interface analysis, or prototyping. Now, once you've obtained this information, you always want to be sure that you're confirming the information for accuracy with the stakeholders and also communicating that information back to the stakeholders in order to create a shared understanding of the information and the requirements. Generally, a key deliverable for gathering and eliciting requirements is a business requirements document or a BRD. Now, the following capabilities are done in iterations, which basically means that you'll be doing these activities in smaller increments over and over until delivery of the project is complete. Gathering requirements for Agile projects generally involves collecting the information that's been established in the vision statement and the product roadmap. Now, the product owner or the customer is initially responsible for communicating the requirements in the form of a product backlog. However, the business analyst is needed in order to refine that backlog so that it's suitable for further work. Eliciting requirements involves decomposing themes and features down into smaller stories that can be prioritized. Story decomposition can be facilitated through observation, interviews, workshops, or other collaborative methods. While elicitation is generally iterative, this is especially true in Agile projects. Agile BAs rely on continuous feedback and learning in order to ensure that the features, themes, and user stories are all communicated correctly. Business analysis and product information can be communicated through story mapping. This helps create a shared understanding of the workflow, the functionality, and also provides the ability to prioritize product delivery. Story mapping generally includes themes, features, stories, and their ranked priority. So key deliverables for gathering and eliciting requirements for an Agile project might include a product backlog that's decomposed into stories and a story map. Squad, I hope you're getting value out of the episode so far. I wanted to take a quick moment to invite you to our upcoming hands-on business analysis practicum. In this program, you'll work through a real-world project, create the most common business analysis deliverables, and get detailed, actionable feedback from yours truly. If you learn best through practical application and implementation, this is the program for you. Check out the details in the description, and I'll see you there. Let's get back into the episode. Number 4, documenting and analyzing requirements. Documenting requirements is probably the most important business analysis skill set because it serves as the roadmap for the technical team to be able to implement the solution. BAs need to be skilled at documenting requirements that are suitable for consumption for various audiences. This means that you may need to communicate or present more technical requirements to the technical team and communicate process and procedure related requirements to the business. Common requirements documentation methods include a functional requirements document or an FRD, a system, software, or solution requirements specification or SRS. Either approach might be supplemented with additional business analysis techniques such as use cases, data models, process models, concept models, or prototypes and mockups. Now let's move on to analyzing the requirements. Now that you've documented the requirements, you want to analyze how well you've structured them to communicate the right information to the right people, and also to make sure that you haven't missed anything. Generally, you'll do this by verifying and validating the requirements. Verifying requirements involves ensuring that the requirements are communicated correctly and that they meet the requirements quality standards. A requirements checklist is a good way to make sure that your requirements are fully verified. In addition, when you're seeking approval from stakeholders in regards to the requirements, you want to make sure that they're also checking to be sure that the business needs are correctly communicated through the requirements that you've documented. Validating the requirements involves assessing the value of the requirements that you've documented. You basically want to make sure that the requirements that you've documented are captured, trace back to the actual business requirements and the business need. You don't want to document requirements that aren't solving the correct problem. Now let's move on to test cases. Depending on the structure of your organization, the business analyst may or may not be responsible for creating some test cases that are aligned with the requirements that have been documented. Now, this might be as simple as creating some acceptance criteria or decomposed requirements that will allow for more detailed test cases to be presented down the line. Or if you don't have a QA team, the BA may be responsible for creating full-blown test cases for every scenario and every requirement. Key business analysis deliverables for documenting and analyzing requirements generally include a system, software, or solution requirements specification, or SRS, a functional requirements document, or FRD, and in some cases, you may be responsible for presenting some test cases. The initial documentation of Agile requirements may be the responsibility of the product owner or the customer, or the Agile business analyst, depending on the overall or selected framework in the organization. Agile specifies requirements through lightweight documentation. The most common approach to this is through user stories. Other widely adopted approaches are job stories and various types of product backlog items. Either of these approaches might be supplemented with some additional documentation such as use cases, concept models, data models, process models, or prototypes and wireframes. Analyzing Agile requirements involves constantly learning and assessing new information and reprioritizing to ensure that the product backlog items that deliver the most value and the biggest impact are delivered sooner. Agile BAs and the product owner or the customer work hand in hand during these types of activities. Key deliverables for documenting Agile requirements includes a refined backlog with elaborated stories and acceptance criteria. Key number 5 is managing and maintaining requirements. This involves a couple of key pieces, and it generally happens in tandem with documenting and analyzing the requirements. So while you're documenting the requirements, you want to make sure that you're tracing the requirements. And this means that you're keeping all levels of requirements aligned with one another. So for example, you want to make sure that your more detailed requirements, say your solution requirements, trace back to your stakeholder requirements, which should trace back to your business requirements, which would ultimately trace back to a need. And this is because you want to create alignment and consistency in the requirements. Another part of managing requirements is getting approvals. Early on, specific stakeholders will be designated per the Project ROSI as requirements approvers as well as requirements change approvers. Before you allocate any resource to a requirement, you want to make sure that all requirements are approved by all stakeholders. Business analysts are also responsible for establishing and facilitating the change request and review processes for requirements. Key deliverables for managing and maintaining requirements may include a traceability matrix, change requests, and also some form of a repository to collect and maintain all of the requirements-related documents or your business analysis work. A large amount of the business analyst contributions for an Agile project will involve backlog refinement. Verifying requirements involves ensuring that the delivery team has enough information about each story in order to perform work on it. This occurs through backlog refinement meetings. This involves ensuring that each story meets the invest criteria, has acceptance criteria, and also meets the team's definition of ready prior to being added to the next iteration. Business analysts ensure that the backlog is refined in preparation for the next planning workshop. Agile requirements also need to be validated. Test cases are usually facilitated through detailed acceptance criteria, which can be validated automatically through behavior-driven development or manually through user acceptance testing. Tracing requirements in Agile is a lightweight effort just to ensure that the stories trace back to the epics, features, and themes. Agile change requests and approvals are embedded in Agile practices through constant feedback and learning loops and adapting to new information by reprioritizing the backlog. Approval is assumed when the customer or the product owner allocates a specific story to an iteration for delivery. Key deliverables include a backlog where higher priority items are decomposed and prioritized, in addition to any supplemental documentation that might help clarify that story. Key number 6, support solution design and implementation. For business analysts, this might include facilitating a joint application development or JAD session, which is basically a session where we involve the customers or the stakeholders as well as the development team so that everybody can collaborate on the actual solution. Business analysts should also contribute to design discussions in terms of being a proxy for the business whenever the development or technical team has questions. You also want to ensure that the design that has been created by the technical team conforms to or traces back to the actual requirements. And you also want to support the technical team in any way you can to make sure that they stay on the right track. And this may even involve collaborating with the QA team during development to provide feedback to the developers as soon as possible regarding any bugs or issues. So key deliverables for supporting solution design and implementation might be a design document or technical specification, which should be created by the technical team. However, the business analyst should be reviewing that document for accuracy and alignment. Story elaboration is the lowest level of story decomposition, and it facilitates design discussion as well as detailed acceptance criteria. So an Agile BA may facilitate breaking down those stories into smaller pieces of work. As mentioned earlier, Agile BAs are typically cross-functional or T-shaped. So the BA may be involved in testing or development functionalities as well as facilitating feedback loops with the customer. Agile BAs collaborate with the product owner or customer as well as the Agile team lead in order to facilitate the next iteration plan. Key number 7, which is monitoring and evaluating the solution. This usually involves some form of measuring the performance of the solution. After a solution has been delivered to the business for production, the business analyst is usually the point person for the business to contact in case there are any bugs or issues to report. It's a common practice that the business analyst will triage these issues prior to escalating to the IT team for resolution. Another component of this involves monitoring the KPIs that were established during the situation analysis. If the solution is underperforming, the business analyst should investigate the user activities as well as the solution components to try to identify the source of why the solution is not performing as well as anticipated. Now, if you're involved in a project that's driven by a problem, the monitor and solution evaluation key may be performed first prior to the situation analysis, and then you'd circle back to this once the solution to the problem has been implemented. Agile development delivers solutions in smaller increments, allowing for greater ability for the customer to identify whether or not functionality delivered is meeting expectations and functioning properly. Solution evaluation can also occur prior to delivery in the form of reviews. Reviews allows the development team to elicit feedback and course correct prior to delivery. During the reviews, the Agile BA may be responsible for collecting the information or the changes that need to be required in order so they can be captured and reprioritized against the other requirements in the backlog. UAT, or user acceptance testing, can also happen in iterations. This will allow the product owner or end users to test out the product before implementation, and the Agile BA may be the point of contact for that. After a solution has been delivered to production, the Agile BA, in addition to other Agile team members, may be responsible for monitoring or collecting feedback from the customers. This is where we're looking for how much value is actually being created by the implementation of this product. The feedback that the team gets is used to adjust any of the in-progress work that's happening for any of the future initiatives or releases. Well, that's all for now. Have a productive and prosperous week.